Imagine this for a moment. The most powerful person in the room is not the loudest, not the angriest, not the one who dominates the conversation, but the one whose inner world cannot be shaken. While chaos erupts, while insults fly, while fear tries to take control, this person remains calm, deliberate, unbroken. That power is not accidental, it is trained. More than 2,000 years ago, a group of thinkers discovered something modern society is still struggling to understand. Emotional control is not emotional suppression, and peace is not weakness. The Stoics knew this long before psychology gave it names, long before self-help books flooded the shelves, and what they knew may be more relevant today than at any other moment in history. We live in an age of emotional overflow. Notifications provoke us, opinions attack us. Social media rewards outrage. We are told that feeling everything intensely is a sign of being alive, and that controlling emotions is somehow unnatural, yet anxiety is at an all-time high. Burnout has become normal. Anger feels justified but leaves us empty. The Stoics looked at the same human condition, fear, loss, betrayal, ambition, and reached a conclusion that sounds almost radical today. It is not events that disturb us, but our judgments about them. That single idea quietly dismantles the illusion that our emotions control us. To the Stoics, emotions were not enemies to be destroyed, nor impulses to be blindly followed. They were signals, raw reactions arising from how we interpret the world. Epictetus, once a slave with no external power at all, taught that while we cannot control what happens to us, we always retain control over how we respond. This was not motivational rhetoric. It was a survival philosophy. He understood that if your peace depends on external conditions, you will forever be fragile. Emotional control, then, was about reclaiming ownership of the mind. The Stoics made a critical distinction that modern culture often ignores between what is within our control and what is not. Our opinions, judgments, desires, and aversions belong to us. The actions of others, the passage of time, illness, reputation, and death do not. Emotional suffering, they argued, comes from confusing these two categories. When we demand that reality behave according to our preferences, frustration is inevitable. When we accept reality as it is and focus on governing our inner world, strength emerges. This did not mean becoming cold or detached from life. Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor burdened with war, plague, and betrayal, wrote private notes reminding himself to remain kind, patient, and just. He felt grief, he felt anger, he felt exhaustion. Emotional control did not mean the absence of emotion. It meant the absence of emotional slavery. The Stoic ideal was not numbness, but clarity. One of the most misunderstood aspects of Stoicism is its view on negative emotions. Anger, envy, fear, and excessive desire were seen not as inevitable forces, but as errors in reasoning. Seneca described anger as a temporary madness, a moment where reason abandons its post, not because anger feels intense, but because it distorts judgment. It convinces us that retaliation is justice, that shouting is strength, that revenge will bring peace. The Stoics observed with brutal honesty that anger promises relief and delivers regret. Instead of reacting impulsively, Stoics practiced deliberate pause. They trained themselves to create space between stimulus and response. In that space lived freedom. This practice was not abstract, it was daily discipline. When insulted, they questioned whether the insult was truly harmful or merely unpleasant. When facing loss, they reminded themselves that everything external is borrowed, never owned. When overwhelmed by fear, they examined whether the fear was rooted in reality or imagination. Perhaps the most powerful Stoic insight about emotional control is this: we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Anticipation of pain often hurts more than pain itself. Worry rehearses disasters that may never arrive. The Stoics recognized this pattern and refused to cooperate with it. They practiced negative visualization, not to become pessimistic, but to become resilient. By calmly contemplating loss in advance, they reduced its emotional shock. What is expected is endured more easily than what is feared in secret. Modern psychology would later echo this in cognitive behavioral therapy, which teaches that thoughts shape emotions and emotions shape behavior. The Stoics reached this conclusion centuries earlier through observation and reason. They understood that by changing the narrative in the mind, the emotional response changes as well. Control the interpretation, and you control the emotion. Another key Stoic principle: was voluntary discomfort. By occasionally choosing hardship, simple food, cold exposure, restraint, they trained themselves not to panic when comfort disappeared. This was emotional conditioning. If you can remain calm without luxury, you cannot be emotionally blackmailed by its loss. In a world addicted to convenience, the Stoic approach appears harsh, yet it produced individuals who were internally free, capable of facing adversity without collapse. The Stoics also knew that emotional control is deeply connected to values. When your sense of worth depends on praise, criticism will devastate you. When your identity is tied to status, loss will feel like death. Stoicism redirected the source of self-worth inward, toward character. Virtue, wisdom, courage, justice, and self-discipline was the only true good. Everything else was secondary. This shift alone dissolves countless emotional disturbances. You cannot be humiliated if your value does not depend on opinion. You cannot be crushed by failure if your aim is effort, not outcome. Importantly, Stoics did not believe in suppressing emotions. Suppression creates pressure. Pressure eventually explodes. Instead, they believed in understanding emotions so thoroughly that they lose their power to dominate. When anger arises, observe it, question it, trace its origin. Is it protecting something fragile within you? Is it reacting to wounded pride? This introspective approach transforms emotion from a tyrant into a teacher. The Stoic approach to grief is perhaps the most humane example of emotional control. They did not deny pain. They allowed mourning, but they resisted despair. Grief to them was natural, but self-destruction was optional. They believed love does not require emotional collapse, and remembrance does not require suffering without limit. Acceptance was not indifference, it was respect for reality. In relationships, Stoicism offered a radical form of emotional maturity. Do not demand that others behave according to your expectations. Do not attach your peace to their approval. Love without possession, care without control. When disappointment arises, examine whether it comes from the other person's actions or from your unspoken assumptions. Most emotional conflict, the Stoics believed, is the result of unconscious contracts we expect others to honor without ever agreeing to them. In leadership, emotional control was considered essential. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that he would encounter ungrateful, dishonest, and selfish people, not to become cynical, but to remain composed. Expecting perfection from flawed humans guarantees frustration. Emotional control allows leaders to act from reason rather than impulse, from justice rather than ego. What makes Stoic emotional control so powerful is that it is grounded in realism. It does not promise happiness as constant pleasure. It promises tranquility as stability. It does not eliminate pain. It reduces unnecessary suffering. It does not deny emotion. It disciplines it. Today, we are encouraged to react instantly, to express everything, to identify with every feeling that arises. The Stoics would caution us gently. Not every emotion deserves your allegiance. You are not your anger. You are not your anxiety. You are the awareness that experiences them. This subtle shift in identity is transformative. When emotions pass through you rather than define you, you regain command. Stoicism also teaches that emotional control is a daily practice, not a personality trait. Even the greatest Stoics admitted their failures. Marcus Aurelius scolded himself for impatience. Seneca admitted his struggles with anger. The goal was progress, not perfection. Each moment offered a choice. React automatically or respond intentionally. Perhaps the most comforting Stoic lesson is this: peace is always available, regardless of circumstances. Not because life becomes easier, but because the mind becomes stronger. When you stop arguing with reality, reality stops hurting you unnecessarily. When you accept impermanence, loss loses its terror. When you detach your worth from outcomes, fear loosens its grip. The Stoics knew that emotional control is not about becoming less human. It is about becoming fully human. A person ruled by impulse is predictable, reactive, and easily manipulated. A person guided by reason is free. Emotional control is freedom in its purest form, the ability to choose your response, even when the world chooses chaos. So the next time you feel overwhelmed, insulted, or afraid, remember this ancient insight whispered across centuries. You do not control the storm, but you do control the helm. And that control, quietly mastered, is the difference between a life ruled by emotion and a life guided by wisdom.